Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Toronto After Dark. And tonight's screening of The Hollow One. I think you're going to enjoy this. It is creepy as shit. As usual, we have a short film before the feature. It is called Heir, and the director is here. Richard Powell, do you want to come up and say a few words?
Hi there. Hi everyone, thanks for coming. Zach, come up. Just bring my producer up with me as well. So, yeah, I guess the only thing I can say about Heir is we're incredibly grateful to Tad for allowing such a small film to have such a grand stage. Short films sometimes don't get the same kind of due that features get, so it's really great to feel like you're on level with the feature filmmakers and it inspires you to aspire to the same thing, get to feature yourself on it. I'm not going to say much about the film itself because it's only 14 minutes and I think everything I need to say is on the screen. All I'll say is Heir was inspired by the type of horror film that looks to deal with, I guess, social problems, social issues, personal anxieties, and I feel like horror operates at its best when it's dealing with those type of issues. So with that said, we hope you guys enjoy the show and take something from it. And thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. Okay, I guess I should also thank our sponsors. They are Anchor Bay, Raven Banner, Space, and Cineplex. Also, please give it up for our volunteers. They are great, and they keep the show running. We also have some of the cast and crew here for The Hollow One, and to make a short intro is multi-hyphenate here, sound editor, composer, and executive producer, Brian P. Coming up.
Wow, this is awesome. Hey, so I first want to thank Toronto After Dark for showing our film. It's really awesome to be amongst really cool and amazing films that we've seen, so we're very privileged and honored, so thank you. And also thank you guys for coming out. It's just really good to see this crowd. I really hope you guys like the movie, so stick around for Q&A. Thank you.
Welcome to the stage, the writer-director of The Hollow One, Nathan Hendrickson. Composer, Brian Hamilton. And actor, Chelsea Barling. Nathan.
Yes.
Where did this come from? I understand this is your first film, correct?
Yes,
and you don't usually work in this medium. So.
No, I come from the game side. I've been a horror fan my whole life, and I sort of went down a different path somewhere around 20 years ago, and just always wanted to make a film since I was a young kid. And so a couple of years ago, I wasn't getting any younger, and decided that I was going to do something. I better start doing something now, and so just came up with an idea based on part of a game I did a while ago, and just sort of fleshed it out over time, and eventually it became this film, and here it is.
And this was pretty much put together independently, like without.
Yeah, we just got some friends together. We shot it over a 3-week period a couple years ago, and then over the last couple of years we've been putting it together in between our day jobs.
Chelsea, what did you think about this when you read the script, and were you ready to be in a very obvious, weird horror movie?
It's my first horror film. I actually kind of got involved pretty early on in the script writing process. I had been introduced to Nathan through Brian, and he sent me the script to look at, and this was probably a year before we started shooting. So then from then on, I kind of read through 4 or 5 different adaptations of the script, and I just always really loved it from the very beginning. I thought it was different from anything else I'd ever seen. I really loved the character of Anna, and we had never actually even met in person before. This is all through email, so he didn't know what I looked like, I didn't know anything, and I just said, if this ever, really happens, I would really like to, audition for you. And so flash forward 1.5 years later, I auditioned for him multiple times. I live in New York, they're in Seattle. So I did several tape submissions, and then I flew out to Seattle to audition in person for him. So I was always really excited about it.
Brian, you want to talk a little bit about the music and the sound design?
Yeah,
The sound design is fantastic.
Thank you very much. Particularly the whole sound, we wanted something that was going to be, if you see the music, we were trying to really push the emotion. And yes, there's like I'm really big on the, okay, build it up, okay. There's one there. So, but we did a lot of that, and we wanted the music to be more of a, kind of representing something a little more older. So we used, particularly in the instruments, that we wanted to go with something a little more kind of moody, and a lot of the drones and everything. One particular thing is the dark figure, the creature. We just went back and forth on how he was going to sound, how he was going to, what was his effects going to be when he talks, but particularly a lot of the crackling and stuff that we had to kind of come up with something. So it was a combination of rope creaks and basically candy wrappers all mixed together. So, but it turned out pretty
Low
good.
tech.
Exactly.
Are there any questions in the audience? Raise your hands high, because I'm blinded by a spotlight. Right there?
Where did you draw the mythology for the Hollow One? What was the inspiration behind that?
I've always been fascinated in just eternal beings, you know, in a universe that exists beyond us and before the world was created. And so I love this idea of the unknown, of what's out there, and you know, the things that could be living trillions of years ago before this planet even existed, essentially finding us and becoming interested in who we are and our God and all these types of things. And there's a whole mythology behind it. We're working on some other scripts and stuff, but yeah, it's something that existed, you know, trillions of years ago, and essentially just found its way here in its search for this being that it sees, you know, creating a planet.
There was one down front here.
Okay.
I was curious what the game you referenced was.
I worked on I co-created a game called Condemned.
Okay.
About 6 or 7 years ago. It was based on some eternal beings, you know, fighting the good fight, as all games do.
There was one somewhere over there.
There's one.
Oh, right in the middle.
You mentioned some other script ideas based on the mythology of it. Are you thinking of a sequel or just sort of expanding the world?
We're working on a bunch of different projects. I think, you know, one, going back and sort of exploring where it came from, you know, how the Laura's family and Linda's family initially found it, and then also, you know, what it exactly it really is. This was sort of meant to be that sort of experience where, you know, if you and I are standing, you know, we're going home and we just see something that's beyond our ability to understand, that, you know, what would we do and how would we react to it? And in this particular film, it's these people get caught in a trap so fast that they don't even know what hit them, and they don't have time to talk about it or determine what it is, or even, you know, messing with this device. It's like an ant trying to mess with a spoon. It's like they don't even know what they're doing with it, and the dark figure, of course, is not threatened at all by it. And so it just wraps them up in a bow and makes them do what they want to do, whether they know it or not.
Actually, I was going to ask you specifically about the creature design.
Yes.
And about how that started and what you were sort of hoping to achieve and what you were hoping to not do.
Well, I think in the end, we wanted to create something that was just unusual and different. You know, if you're going to present an idea, if we see something and it doesn't make sense, it's the concept of a technology way beyond our ability to understand or even to truly describe. And so, you know, we just went about creating these elements that seem to contrast and then also conflict a bit and throw in elements. I mean, the hands in particular, there's a mythology behind them. But when you see it, you know, there's things that you can't understand, or you won't. There's no way you can come up with a hypothesis or a way to kill it, or based on what it looks like. It's just, you know, not easily. You just can't figure it out. And so that was kind of the concept behind it, was not to make it seem like something we'd see today, or real, that we'd know what to do with a zombie or something.
Any other questions right there?
character a woman?
It's a good question. I was just fascinated by the experiences that she could go through. I think, you know, I just like the idea of the vulnerability of it, you know, and her sort of, you know, it's such a great question because to me it's the emotional relationships between the sisters was something that I was more interested in than developing a relationship between, you know, two brothers or a brother and a sister or just trying to put these female characters in heroic situations. I don't know, I just felt more fascinated by telling that story than I would be between two guys, I guess. Or a guy. I mean, that's not a great answer, I know, but it just seemed more interesting.
One over here, Steve.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. Based on the screening, there was a couple of moments, particularly with Matt's character exploring some of the areas where you got some laughs out of us.
Yeah.
Was that intentional when you were writing it? Because some of the stuff was pretty hilarious.
I think in the end, you know, the goal was to make something that sort of harkened back to the 70s and 80s when I was watching films and enjoying horror films, and you know, characters do stupid things and they wander off. You know, to me it was I wanted them, you know, the audience to also feel like, you know, they weren't these characters weren't characters in a horror film, and so you're going to follow a trail of blood at a barn. You know, I worked at my uncle's farm one time and walked in on him cutting the head off of a goat. I mean, there's just horrible things that happen in a farm, and things like blood or even goo. It's like if you're not in a horror movie, it's not as scary. And so to me, it was kind of playing out the idea of the innocence of yesteryear, which, you know, I think today, you know, audiences are more aware of that, you know. But no, I think that's fine. I think that's a good response.
All right, we have to wrap it up. It's next film in here, but thank you very much for coming, guys. Thank you for all staying. Please vote for the film on your way out.